Hey guys, it's Jen, Not a Real Farm. So today what I'm doing is taking the sausage and lentil soup that we had last night that was in the fridge and putting it on a freeze dryer tray or two to basically freeze dry it and put it away. I am somebody that does the full meals normally with a freeze dryer, so we're going to be probably putting this soup in the freeze dryer for about 24 hours, and then what we're going to be doing is separating it out into about 3 or 4 different jars. And then that way, rather than, throwing any food away or, creating any food waste, we're putting the stews and the soups away for a rainy day. Because let's face it, if there's 6 quarts of food, in your Instapot, sometimes you just don't get a chance to eat it all. And rather than throw it out, we're just going to save it. So I actually made this soup by using carrots. We used farmer's sausage, the orange lentils, celery, pepper, probably about 4 cups of water. And then of course what happens is when you're slow cooking sausage, it actually brings out that nice sausage flavor into the lentils. So this particular soup was really good, but we've had our fill of it now. We have, we had 6 quarts here, it's half gone. So by the time I transfer it to the trays, we're probably gonna get 2 full-size trays from it, and we're gonna freeze dry it down for about 24 hours. I'm thinking it's gonna take because it's so thick. And then we're going to transfer it into our jars. Now guys, I use any kind of jars, and I'll show you here. The cool thing about a freeze dryer is you don't have to use any specific jars, going to the store and buying canning jars and this and that. If you've got jars that you've saved, you simply just clean them out, wash them out, make sure they're completely dry. And it's a great way to recycle any jars that you have. So I'll be using some old Classico jars that I have from pasta sauce that we had from a while ago, and filling up probably about, because they're so small, probably about 3, maybe even 4 of them by the time this is dry. So usually what happens is it'll dry in this manner. And what I have to do is when I'm putting it into the jars, I have to break it up and sort of tamp it down to turn it into a powder. But great way to save your soups and your stews if there's not a way for you to can them because they're just too thick. So now what we're going to be doing, now that we've smoothed all of this out, is we're going to be putting these into the freezer and allowing these to freeze for a couple of hours. And what this does is it helps the freeze dryer sort of move along a little bit quickly in terms of maybe cutting down a couple hours of the freeze drying for you. You don't have to necessarily do that, but what will happen is sometimes the cycle can take a little longer. So we're going to help our freeze dryer along a little bit, and we're going to freeze these before setting them in the freeze dryer on a cycle to get started. So as you can see, they fit very nicely into the top of my small freezer in the upstairs fridge. So we're going to be leaving these trays in here for a couple of hours, and we're going to be letting them freeze. And in the meantime, what we can do is we can pull out the other trays of food that I have food drying currently and then switch them up. So here's an example of food we had in the fridge. We had a lot of white rice that we had with takeout the other night. So what I did was I dried this because I didn't want to waste it. And the next one I did was Parmesan cheese. So shredded, grated Parmesan cheese, and then it is frozen first, and then I put it into the freeze dryer, and now it is dry as a bone and ready just to be stored as it is. I've got my little packet at the bottom here, obviously to keep the stuff dry. And so now it's just going to permanently go on the shelf. And considering what dairy prices have just shot up to, anytime that I can freeze dry any kind of dairy, cheese, milk, that's what I'm going to be doing. So a lot of sour cream actually we freeze dried. So this will be going on the shelf along with the rice. And right now in the freeze dryer I have hummus and I have apple slices. So those will be coming out shortly. And then from there we'll be putting in our other trays of stew. So the apples are definitely ready to go, so we're gonna pack those up. And I have hummus here. I need to see how dry this is. So the hummus is very powdery, so we can put that away too. I am gonna use a large jar this time. use a big Bernardin jar. I just had one of these kind of hanging around, so we're gonna use one of these. And we are gonna put our apples away. I have 2 trays of these, so they should fit in just fine. Now the first tray, like I said, this is what it looks like. Now, if you don't want them to brown, you can obviously put citric acid on them, but they freeze dry beautifully. Even with the skin on, skin off, it doesn't matter. They freeze dry really nicely. They are super dry and crumbly. See? Let's put these in our jar. That's what it looks like so far. Okay, so let me just get this filled up here. And then we'll get ready to put our next batch on. Once this is filled, basically what you do is you just cap it. And sometimes when you actually put the lid on, what happens is after about 20 minutes, it'll pop down and almost seal with a big pop like you would as if you had canned it, taking the air out of the jar. So it's pretty cool. So that's what it looks like so far. I'm just gonna put the secondary tray in, and then we will be good to go for the other stuff. Turned out nicely. They feel like styrofoam. So we're just gonna put these in the jar. You can hear how light they are when they drop into the jar. It's funny. Let's see if I can get any more in here. So you can stack these to the rafters, guys. It's not like canning where you have to stop at the shoulder. You can stack it right to the top, which is handy. Okay, so that's what I have. This is what the jar looks like. It's completely full. And this is all I have left. 3 pieces, so we're probably gonna just use these as snacks. So we have an entire full jar here of apple slices. So now all you're gonna do is you're gonna take your cap. And these are previously used caps. This is not a new cap. And you're just gonna put it on like normal. Okay, and of course your packet is in the bottom. And there you have it. And now, because these are completely bone dry, you can just put these on your shelf and move on to the next tray. Pretty cool, guys. Okay, so it's been a couple of hours. Let's see. Oh yeah, these are frozen solids. So what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna throw them in the freeze dryer and begin the next cycle. So guys, just an add-in, what we're gonna do is we made a hamburger casserole actually the other night, and the guys have taken, you know, their fair share over the week as well. So what we're gonna do is we're just going to quickly throw this in the freezer for a couple of hours before I put the other trays in the freeze dryer. And we're gonna add this in to the freeze dryer along with our lentils and sausage stew, because there's no point in trying to run a half cycle. So we're just gonna add this in because I don't wanna waste it. So once again, this is a hamburger corn casserole that I made with rice. We had cheese, I put taco seasonings over it. So this is probably gonna give me another full tray to add to the freeze dryer. So let's put it all in there. So what I've done is I've spread out the hamburger mix that I made from the other night, and I'm just gonna freeze this for a couple of hours and add it in with the trays that I'm doing for the lentils and sausage. There's no point in only having a couple of trays in there. We might as well fill it up. This one was good. If you're a fan of tacos and nachos and even naan bread, what we've done here is we've done a hamburger casserole, which I did as a 1 pot in the Instapot. So it had, you know, your white rice, your hamburger, your corn. It had red Spanish onions in it. Taco mix is put over this. It can be homemade or it can be, you know, pre-mixed, whatever you've got. Some pepper, and I've also put some black beans in here. And I did this all in one pot and then put it out in a casserole dish, let it bake with some nacho cheese over it, and voila. So these types of mixes can come in handy because we started it out as a casserole, and then the next couple of days after that, what we used it for was nachos. We basically heated up nachos and then ate this with nachos. And then for dinner last night, we actually took it and wrapped it in naan bread and, you know, put it in the oven and baked the naan bread with it. So it gave us about, you know, 3 different types of meals that we could use over the week. But now that we're done with this and it's still basically full, what I've done is just spread it over 2 of the Harvest Right trays, and we're just gonna freeze it for a little bit before I add it in as tray 3 and 4 in the machine. So let's let that freeze for a bit. All right, let's check and see if this is frozen. Yep, so the hamburger rice casserole is frozen solid. So now I'm gonna add them to the freeze dryer. Okay guys, so what I've done is I've put in the hamburger casserole. So this is going into freeze dry, so it's on the tray. We have the second tray of hamburger casserole going in. And then we also have the sausage and lentil stew. So all of these are frozen trays. We're gonna push these in. We're gonna press start. We're gonna leave it for the next 24 hours and then we'll see what the results look like. Okay, let's check this. We have been drying for about 25 hours. So as you can see, this is super crumbly and dry. So this one is ready for us to put away. Let's check the second tray here. Oh yeah, this is so dry it's really crumbly. So this is good. And let's see, what else do we have here? Oh yes, we have our stew. Now the stew is thicker, so you want to make sure that there's no cold spots on here to indicate that there is any of the ice, anything left in here. So far this is good. This is very dry and crumbly. Let's check the very last tray. Yep, so this one is done as well. Okay, so now what we do is we just have to put them in the jars. Excellent. Okay, so inevitably the soup is ready to go. It freeze-dried beautifully. It's very crumbly, as you can see. So essentially all you're going to be doing when you do this is you're going to take your chunks of soup, and I found an old big Vicks pickle jar that I kept around. So I'm going to be putting the soup in here, capping it off. I've already put the oxygen absorber in the bottom. And so now what we need to do is just begin filling it with the soup. Okay, so you can just grab it. You can smash this up and you can just grab it. Now I've put a funnel here on top. You basically just put that in there and fill up your soup. You can see here, it's going in just in little chunks. Now you can obviously powder that if you want to. You just bring something to tamp it down. But I'm gonna fill this up and then we'll move on to the next jar and I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. So as you can clearly see, this has taken up both of my trays. So this is, like I said, a dill pickle jar. And usually what I like to do is I like to just tamp it down a little bit just to make sure that it all fits in. And then what we do is we put our cover on, nice and tight, and it's ready. So now this can go sit on your shelf. This is bone dry. So that is our sausage and lentil soup. And next is the rice. Okay, so here's our 2 trays of our rice, our hamburger casserole. So I'm just going to be using the old Classico jars I have, and I have my funnel on top. So you can basically just fill her on up. I have 3 of these jars. So we're just gonna fill them to the top. I might need 4 actually, we'll see. Let's fill up the one here. You can scoop this with a spoon if you want. It's up to you, however you decide that you want to handle everything. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, so you can see. All right, so we're filled up to the brim here. So all we're gonna do is cap it. I already have my packet in the bottom. And there we have it. So it's probably gonna take about 3 or 4 of these little jars. And the reason why I put these in smaller ones is because if we just wanna do something really quick, like have these on nachos or have them in wraps, then they're separated in 4 smaller jars as opposed to the bigger one with the soup. And there you have it, guys. So pretty much, because we would obviously break the Bix jar in 2 meals. So you pretty much almost have 6 meals sitting here that you can use, and especially with the hamburger casserole, you can use that for anything, whether that be taco mix, anything to do with making wraps, or just put it back in a casserole again. And the reason why we break it down into smaller portions is because sometimes that's really all we need. 24 hours, 6 meals. Thanks very much for joining me today, guys. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up or subscribe, and see you soon.